So I got some questions from just from comments on my YouTube channel. So I have this one question that I wanted to show you. I thought this was a wonderful question. So this is from Garlic Bread 62. That is a very yummy profile name, by the way. I love garlic bread. He says, may I ask how you are able to know with such certainty that God is telling you things? Even if I was morally certain, it wouldn't be absolute certainty. There is a gap between us as created beings with God who is infinite. I pray every day, but try not to say God says or God told me, because I know I am sinful and infallible human capable of error. And then Foster Duncan 7 says the Holy Spirit. So yes, I agree with you, Foster Duncan 7. So, and I answered him as well. So I love this question. And so this was in response to the video where I was shared. This was the very end of the podcast before the Shroud of Turin, where I was telling about that God had told my husband and I to serve at different churches right now. And so I was telling that story. And I do say often, God told me this, God told me that, and I really believe that, a lot of times that I feel 100% certain about certain things that I believe that God has said to me, to Craig, to both of us, but on the other hand, and here's how I responded. So I say, awesome question. So the more time we spend with God in prayer, in Bible, in fellowship, worship, etc., the more we learn to recognize his voice. And God is so personal that he can and will, if we seek him and we surrender to him, God will create a unique, customized way of communicating with each one of us. Isn't that awesome? I ask him. I do experience what I believe are words from the Lord fairly regularly, as well as visions sometimes. But there are millions of other ways that God can choose to communicate with us. So in this particular case, the miraculous way that God told my husband and I the same message and then confirmed it in so many ways, I feel absolutely certain that God really did tell me this. However, I love your humble attitude. I love that you say you would not have absolute certainty. And I actually agree with you 100%. And I say, are you surprised? I believe that no matter how close we come to God, no matter how much we have learned to recognize his voice, we are still fallible humans. And no matter how certain I feel about a particular word I think is from God, I can still make mistakes about that. Humility and understanding that we'll always be capable of error is so important in our sanctification process. So yeah, I think that is so key. And I try to remember, especially when I'm talking about visions or when I think that God has given me like a word, or especially a prophetic word, I try very hard to always say, I think God told me this. I believe God said this, instead of going around saying, God said, the word of the Lord came to me. And, I try very hard not to use that kind of language, because I am very, very aware of my own fallibility. And no matter how certain I am that God has told me something, I could still always be wrong. I could always be. And that's true of all of us. It doesn't matter how close any of us get to God. We are still in this human shell, and we will never be perfect. And we are always capable of error. And I think that it's very important for us to remember that. And the humility of remembering that about ourselves will help us from becoming prideful. Especially, people who have a gift like modern day prophets. I think that it is very tempting to get a pridefulness about that kind of a gift, that would get you a lot of attention. And I think that it's very important to remember that we will never get to the point of infallibility, of inerrancy.